Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9, 1945, the first of 4 brothers. He was the son of William E. Rader and his wife, the former Dorothea M. Cook. He grew up in Wichita and graduated from Riverview School and later Wichita Heights High School. Rader attended Kansas Wesleyan University in 1965 to 1966 and then spent 4 years from 1966 to 1970 in the U.S. Air Force, including time in Texas, Alabama, Okinawa, South Korea, Greece, and Turkey. When he returned to the United States, he moved to Park City, a suburb located 7 miles north of Wichita. He worked for a time in the meat department of Ligachure's IGA supermarket in Park City, where his mother was also a bookkeeper. He married Paula Dietz on May 22, 1971, and attended Butler County Community College in El Dorado, earning an associate's degree in electronics in 1973. He enrolled at Wichita State University that same fall and graduated in 1979 with a bachelor's degree in administration of justice. From November 1974 until being fired in July 1988, Rader worked at the Wichita-based office of ADT Security Services, a company which sold and installed alarm systems for commercial business during Rader's years there. He held several positions, including installation manager. Rader was a census field operations supervisor for the Wichita area in 1989 for 3 months prior to the 1990 federal census. Rader had worked since 1991 as a supervisor of the compliance department at Park City, a 2-employee multifunctional department in charge of animal control, housing problems, zoning, general permit enforcement, and a variety of nuisance cases. In this position, neighbours recalled him as the sometimes overzealous and extremely strict. One neighbour complained that he euthanized her dog for no reason. On March 2, 2005, the Park City Council terminated Rader's employment for failure to report to work or to call in. By this time, though, he was detained by the authorities. Rader served on both the Sedgwick County's Board of Zoning Appeals and the Animal Control Advisory Board, appointed in 1996 and resigned in 1998. He was also a member of the Christ Lutheran Church, a Lutheran congregation of about 200 people. He had been a member for about 30 years and had been elected president of the Congregation Council and was also a Cub Scout leader. Dennis and Paula are both parents of 2 adult children, Brian and Kerry. Both were born after the BTK murders started. On July 27, 2005, Sedgwick County District Judge Eric Yost waived the usual 60-day waiting period and granted an immediate divorce for Paula Rader, agreeing that her mental health was in danger. Rader didn't contest the divorce and the 34-year marriage was ended. Paula Rader said in her divorce petition that her mental and physical condition had been adversely affected by the marriage. She also contended that the couple was incompatible and that he had failed to perform material marital duties and obligations, possibly due to his incarceration. Dennis Rader, who took 10 innocent lives in the area of Wichita, Kansas as the BTK killer, seemingly had his twisted methods figured out to a T. A family man, government worker, and church leader by day, Rader was smart enough to blend in with his community and avoid detection for the string of victims, stalking, and killings that fulfilled his sexual desires. And while he relished the headlines that announced his grotesque acts and the taunting messages he relayed to the media, he also controlled his impulses enough to suddenly stop the killings and disappear before authorities could get too close to his trail. Yet it was his insatiable lust for the attention that ultimately proved to be his Achilles heel. BTK re-emerged years later to remind police that he remained at large, but got too careless with his cat and mouse games, providing the investigators with an opening to crack the once unsolvable case and bring the killer to justice. Now, close to 2 decades later, Rader was back in the headlines. Moreover, authorities had named him a prime suspect in 2 unsolved disappearances and possibly identified an 11th BTK victim. Here are Rader's grisly crimes, final capture, and latest public statements in review. In between murders, he lived a remarkably normal-looking outward life with a wife and 2 children. He was perceived by acquaintances to be a pillar in his Wichita, Kansas community. Inwardly, however, he was secretly satisfying his sexual needs and delayed his compulsion to kill for months and even years at a time by engaging in autoerotic fantasies until the need to commit murder became overwhelming once again. By all accounts, the childhood of Dennis Lynn Rader was normal and unremarkable. He was born on March 9, 1945 in a quiet corner of Kansas, close to where Oklahoma and Missouri all come together. His father was in the US Marine Corps and later worked for the Kansas Electric Utility following World War II. Young Rader joined the Boy Scouts as a youth and participated in group activities at the Lutheran Church. He attended Riverview Elementary School, where he was an average to below average student and exhibited an introverted and withdrawn personality. By his own admission, Rader developed fantasies about domination, bondage, and torture at a very early age while still in grade school. Dr. Tony Rourke, a forensic psychologist who evaluated Rader following his arrest, believes that something happened early in Rader's life to spawn the BTK killer. He said, "If Rader was completely honest, which he is not, I am sure that we would find some sort of childhood event that Rader immediately associated with feelings of sexuality." Somehow, very early on, Rader encountered an event where he immediately linked sexual pleasure with watching a live creature suffer and die. After that, the first encounter, Rader probably began to work very hard to nurture those feelings. Rader admits to having killed cats and dogs by hanging and strangling them as a youth. By puberty, he had already dreamed of tying girls up and having sex with them. He says that his fantasies were almost like a picture show that he wanted to direct and produce, no matter what the cost. Actress Annette Funicello, a Mouseketeer on the original Mickey Mouse Club TV show in the 1950s, was one of his favourite targets for imaginary bondage. The only social activities that Rader indulged in during his youth were related to his Lutheran church or the Boy Scouts. While he was a Boy Scout, he learned the art of tying knots that would help him in later life when he bound his victims before killing them. Unceremoniously, he graduated from the Wichita Heights High School in the class of 1963. He had a job for a time working in a local grocery store, and in the summer of 1966, at the age of 21, Rader joined the US Air Force, probably to avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War. While in the Air Force, Rader would peek through window blinds to watch women undress, and he broke into the homes to steal their undergarments. Less than a year following his return from the service to Wichita, on May 22, 1971, Rader married a young woman named Paula Dietz. In July 1973, he found employment with Cessna, a small aircraft manufacturer. In the fall of 1973, he began working towards a bachelor's degree at Wichita State University and dreamed of becoming a police officer. In late 1973, Rader was let go by Cessna. He suddenly found himself unemployed, in a bad state of mind, unhappy, and with free time on his hands. He slipped deeper into the dark fantasy world that he had known since childhood and wanted to know just what it would feel like to strangle a woman with his bare hands until she died. He was obsessed with pornography and liked to daydream, and he nicknamed his penis Sparky. He began to enjoy what he called trolling, which meant driving or walking around certain neighbourhoods and school campuses with young women for him to observe and lust over. Dennis stalked women as they shopped alone in grocery stores and planned to hide in the back seat of their cars and kidnap them at gunpoint. He would focus on a good prospect and then enter into his fantasy of bondage, sex, and murder. By 1974, Rader was compelled to act on his obsessive fantasies. He trained himself how to kill and avoid detection, and he had learned to tie knots and nooses. There was a new Latino family that moved into his neighbourhood, and Rader lustfully noticed Julie Otero, aged 34, and her daughter Josephine, aged 11. He had a thing for Latinas, and admiring their beautiful brown skin and dark hair, he stalked Julie and Josephine Otero for weeks to learn their daily routines. Based on what he learned from his surveillance, he devised a plan to take them by surprise in their own home. Young Josephine was the prize he sought. He gathered together his so-called hip kit, which included a gun, knives, hoods, cords, tape, plastic bags, gloves, and various tools for breaking and entering. On the morning of January 15th, he could no longer wait. At 8:20 a.m., he went to the Otero house, entered the backyard, and cut the telephone line. Upon entering the house, despite his careful planning, things did not go as he expected. Rader discovered that in addition to the two females, Julie's husband, Joe Otero, aged 38, and Joey, the couple's 9-year-old son, were also at home. The Otero's 3 other children, Charlie, Danny, and Carmen, were not at home. Undeterred, Rader somehow was able to control all 4 people using his gun. He told them that he was a criminal on the run, needed money, food, and a car to escape. Using his cold, unemotional, and non-threatening demeanour, Rader convinced the Otero family that he meant no harm, and he was able to get all of them tied up without incident. Everything changed for the worse when Rader put a bag over Joe's head that morning. He was about to become a mass murderer by killing a family of 4. In succession, Rader strangled and killed Father Joe and little Joey. Mother Julie begged Rader to stop before she too was strangled to death. Rader then moved on to his real target, the daughter Josephine. He forced her to go down into the basement where he hanged Josephine from his sewer pipe. When asked why he did this, his response was, "I thought it would be interesting to watch her die." The horrible but well-orchestrated mass murder required surveillance, perfect timing, and the ability to subdue a group of people who are normally more than capable to defend themselves. Joe Otero was a former boxer, and Julie practiced judo. The crime had the hallmarks of a military operation, but there were also nagging details of sex and bondage that the police did not want to discuss with the press. Thus began the killing career of Dennis Rader. On April 4th, 1974, Rader struck again. Catherine Bright, another Coleman employee, returned home with her brother Kevin to find Rader waiting with a gun. Kevin somehow survived a gunshot to the head, but he was unable to save his sister, who Rader stabbed to death. In October 1974, Rader introduced himself to the police. After one young man allegedly confessed to killing the Oteros with 2 friends, an editor at the Wichita Eagle received a strange phone call that directed him to a mechanical engineering book at the Wichita Public Library. Police found the book and a letter wedged inside which read in part, "Those 3 dudes you have in custody are just talking to get publicity. The code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK, you see he added again, they will be on the next victim." Along with including then unknown details of the Otero killings, the letter was filled with what the authorities came to recognise as the killer's peculiar brand of misspelling and grammatical errors, along with a distinct sexually suggestive signature. On March 17, 1977, BTK murdered a mother of 3. Entering a home by way of the 5-year-old child who opened the door, Rader barricaded the boy and his 2 siblings in the bathroom before strangling their mother, Shirley Vane. The children eventually escaped and provided police with a vague description of the intruder. On December 8, 1977, BTK reported his next victim. After binding and strangling 25-year-old Nancy Fox, Rader headed to a payphone to point police to his handiwork. "You will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing," he bluntly told the 911 dispatcher. On January 31st, 1978, the killer reached out with a poem. The Wichita Eagle received an index card imprinted with a poem that began with, Shirley Locks, wilt thou be mine?" Unaware of the connection to Shirley Vine and believing it to be a Valentine's Day note, the mail clerk forwarded the card to the paper's classified ads department. On February 10, 1978, the BTK threat was made public after another letter. Apparently angered by the lack of response to his last attempt, the killer sent a more direct message to Wichita-based KAKE TV. "How many people do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper or some national attention?" he wrote, before reeling off a list of suggested nicknames, including the BTK Strangler, the Wichita Hangman, and the Asphyxiator. Wichita Police Chief Richard Lemunion subsequently called a news conference to reveal for the first time the presence of the BTK Strangler in the area. "We have no reason but to believe the individual has the capability to kill again," he warned. On April 28, 1979, another target narrowly missed becoming the next victim. Rader lay in wait for Anna Williams, but gave up and left when the 63-year-old woman took too long to return home. Less than 2 months later, Williams learned of her brush with death when she received several of her personal items by mail, along with a poem entitled, "Oh Anna, why don't you appear?" "Oh Anna, why don't you appear? 'Twas perfect plan of deviant pleasure so bold on that spring night, my inner feeling hot with the propension of new awakening season. Worn, wet with inner fear and rapture by pleasure of entanglement like new vines at night. Oh Anna, why didn't you appear?" Drop of fear-fresh spring rain would roll down from your nakedness, descent to lofty fever that burns within. In that small world of longing, fear, rapture, and desperation, the game we play fall on devil ears. Fantasy spring forth mounts to storm fury, then winter calm at end. Oh Anna, why didn't you appear? Alone now in another time span, I lay with sweet and rapture garments across most private thought. Bed of spring moist grass, clean before the sun, enslaved with control. Warm wind scenting the air. Sunlight sparkled tears in eyes so deep and clear. Alone again, I trod in the past memory of mirrors and ponder why number 8 was not. Oh Anna, why didn't you appear? On August 14, 1979, BTK's phone call was broadcast. Seeking help from the public, authorities released the recording of the BTK's December 1977 phone call to report the death of Nancy Fox. Tips came pouring in from listeners who thought they recognised the voice, although no relevant information emerged. In 1984, the Ghostbusters Task Force was formed. Chief Lemunion established a task force devoted to BTK's crimes, nicknamed the Ghostbusters after the popular Bill Murray movie. The task force, which included a young officer named Ken Landwehr, would spearhead later efforts to track down the killer and took pains to carefully organise and preserve valuable evidence. On April 27, 1985, Rader strangled his neighbour. After an evening of bingo and dinner with her boyfriend, 53-year-old Maureen Hedge was taken from her home in the Wichita suburb of Park City, just down the street from Rader's house. She was found dead by strangulation 8 days later, although the police failed to connect her murder to BTK at the time. On September 16, 1986, a husband became the suspect in another BTK killing. Bill Uyghur returned home for lunch to find his 2-year-old son sitting by himself and his wife Vicky dead in their bedroom. In the absence of other credible evidence, the husband became the primary suspect in Vicky's death. On January 19, 1991, BTK killed for what is believed to be the final time. He threw a cinder block through a sliding door at the home of retiree Dolores Davis, strangled her to death and left her body by a bridge. Seemingly preoccupied by his day-to-day duties as a Park City compliance officer and a father of 2, Rader ceased killing and BTK dropped off the map. In January 2004, the Wichita Eagle ran a 30th anniversary piece on BTK. 3 decades after Rader first killed in the Oteros, the Wichita Eagle printed an article recalling the terror BTK wielded in the 1970s and suggested that he had faded from memory after so many years. Rader later admitted that this article spurred him to revive his deadly alter ego. On March 19, 2004, BTK announced his return. The Wichita Eagle received an envelope from a Bill Thomas Kilman, containing a copy of Vicky Uygur's missing driver's license, photos of her body, and BTK's distinctive signature. The chilling message linked her unsolved murder to BTK and declared the Wichita terror to be very much alive. On May 5, 2004, BTK teased with a puzzle. BTK's next outreach, mailed to KAKE-TV, included a phony ID, chapter titles for BTK biography, and a find the word letter grid spelling out clues like prowl and fantasies, though investigators noted the lack of his usual signature. Puzzle sleuths later realised the letters RADER are grouped around the numbers 6220, the author's street address. On December 13, 2005, BTK left another disturbing package. After BTK left more messages in various public locations, a man walking through Wichita's Murdoch Park stumbled upon a garbage bag containing Nancy Fox's driver's license and a Barbie doll with a hood over its head and arms tied behind its back. On January 25, 2005, a postcard pointed to more clues. Acting on instructions from a postcard mailed to KAKE-TV, police find a cereal box on a road outside Wichita containing a graphic description of BTK's first murders and another doll fashioned in a death position. However, it's another section of the postcard which inquired as to whether his package was found at the local Home Depot that proved more interesting to authorities. After poking around the store, investigators learned that one employee had found a cereal box in the bed of his pickup truck. A search of his trash produced the box and a message asking if BTK could communicate via a computer floppy disk without being traced. If so, the police are instructed to return a newspaper ad with the message, "Rex, it will be okay." On January 28, 2005, police signaled BTK through the newspaper. After an undercover detective makes arrangements with the Wichita Eagle, the paper ran a classified ad that read, "Rex, it will be okay. Contact me, P.O. Box, first 4 ref numbers at 67202. 6 days later, BTK confirmed his receipt of the message through another postcard sent to KAKE. On February 16, 2005, a computer disk broke the case open. A computer disk arriving by mail was relayed to cybercop Randy Stone, who uncovered BTK's message about checking an index card for more information, along with the hidden metadata that revealed the disk to have been used by a dentist at Christ Lutheran Church and Park City Library. Within seconds, an internet search for Christ Lutheran Church revealed the name of its president, Lynn Rader. Already armed with DNA evidence carefully preserved by the Ghostbusters, Lieutenant Landwehr and his team learned that Rader's daughter Kerry had been in hospital for a pap smear. The hospital soon turned over a sample of her DNA, which matched that of BTK. On February 25, 2005, Rader was arrested. Heading home from the office to have lunch with his wife, Rader was pulled over by the line of police cars trailing him and taken into custody. He confessed after being confronted with the DNA evidence and enjoyed what he believed was a bonding session with law enforcement agents, although he was plainly irritated that Landwehr lied to him about the security of communications via computer disk. BTK's arrest was announced at Wichita City Hall the following day, drawing applause from the audience gathered. On April 19, 2005, Rader waived his right to a preliminary hearing. The scheduled hearing ended after a few short minutes, an acknowledgement from the defence that the state possessed enough evidence to send the case to trial. 2 weeks later, a silent Rader had the judge enter a not guilty plea for him. On June 27, 2005, Rader pleaded guilty to the BTK killings. Catching prosecutors off guard by pleading guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder, Rader provided the court with explicit details on how he selected, stalked, and finally killed each of his victims. His lawyer later noted that they went with the guilty plea due to overwhelming evidence against their client and lack of firm legal footing on which to enter an insanity plea. On August 18, 2005, Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison. The 2-day sentencing hearing featured testimony from the investigators who described Rader's documentation of his torture-fueled sexual fantasies, emotional pleas from the victims' families, an apology from the convicted killer, who expressed hope that the families would one day forgive him. Having committed his murders before Kansas reintroduced the death penalty in 1994, the BTK killer received a sentence of 10 consecutive life terms in prison for a minimum of 170 years without the possibility of parole. On January 29, 2009, Rader's daughter, Kerry Rawson, published a book titled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Hope, Love and Overcoming. The memoir described her relationship with Rader growing up and how she overcame the horror of discovering his crimes. On February 22, 2019, Rader wrote a letter to the Daily Mail boasting about how he is treated like a pet inside the high-security El Dorado Correctional Facility. He claimed he was possessed by demons named Batter and Factor X when he committed his crimes and that he had come close to executing an 11th retirement victim. He also spoke lovingly of daughter Kerry following the publishing of her book. On July 21, 2003, in a letter to Fox News Digital, Rader compared himself to Gilgo Beach murder suspect Rex Harriman, calling him a clone of myself, based on the similarities of their cases. Harriman was arrested and charged with 6 counts of murder in connection to the deaths of 3 women. On August 23, 2023, police in Osage County, Oklahoma, announced that Rader was the prime suspect in 2 unsolved murders in Oklahoma and Missouri. A search was conducted at a lot where Rader's home once stood, and authorities uncovered bondage materials and other items of interest. BTK is linked to the disappearance of Cynthia Kinney from Oklahoma in 1976, as well as the death of Shauna Beth Garber, whose body was discovered in Missouri in December 1990. On September 5, 2023, Osage County Sheriff Eddie Verdon told CNN that his team had possibly identified a young woman depicted in one of Rader's colour sketches that authorities have had since 2005. The woman who was shown bound and gagged in a barn was believed to have been from the southwest Kansas and disappeared in 1991. With the help of tips received from the public, police said that they would perform follow-up interviews that might help connect Rader to other crimes committed in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri.
If you like that, then check out our Patreon, where for just $5 a month you get access to exclusive shows like Real Monsters and Playing with Bones with Amy Rose, along with early access to all our minisodes and ad-free access to the Weekend Update and It's Alive! Not convinced yet? Well, head on over now and have 7 days on us. That's a 7-day free trial for all new members. That's It's Alive Pod on Patreon. It's Alive! All the guts and go with none of the guilt. See you on Wednesdays, unless you're on Patreon when you get us all week long.